le plus savant et le plus beau des anges. Tu trahi par le sort et privé de louange. Oh Satan, prends pitié de ma longue misère. Oh prince de l'exil, à qui l'on a fait tort, et qui vaincu toujours te redresse plus forte. Oh Satan, prends pitié de ma longue misère. Toi, qui sais tout, roi des choses souterraines, guérisseur familière des angoisses humaines. Oh Satan, prends pitié de ma longue misère. Toi qui, même en l'autre, au Paris à maudit, enseigné par l'amour à le goût du paradis. Oh Satan, prends pitié de ma longue misère. Oh Satan, prends pitié de ma longue misère. Oh Satan, prends pitié de ma longue misère. Oh Satan, prends pitié de ma longue misère.
Et toi le plus savant et le plus beau des anges, tu trahis pour la sorte et triplé de louanges, Satan, prends pitié de ma longue misère. Au pauvre de l'exil, à qui l'on a fait tort, et qui d'un coup toujours te redresse plus forte. Oh Satan, prends pitié de ma longue misère. Toi qui sais tout avoir des choses séparées, des guérisseurs familières, des angoisses humaines. Oh Satan, prends pitié de ma longue misère. Toi qui venons de trop parmi à maudit, enseigné par l'amour. Oh Satan, prends pitié de ma longue misère, de ma longue misère. Et toi qui de la vente, vieux pour ta mort, j'ai de la espérance. Oh Satan, prends pitié de ma longue misère, de ma longue misère. Toi qui peux t'excuser en calcul, qui t'aime tout en contrôlant. Oh Satan, prends pitié de ma longue misère, prends pitié de ma longue misère. Toi qui sais un seul point de terre, en plus si tu jamais fait peur. Oh Satan, prends pitié de ma longue misère, oh Satan, prends pitié de ma longue misère. Oh Satan, prends pitié de ma longue misère.
Welcome everybody to Segue. Thank you so much for being here. Wow, what a crowd. My name is Stephen Motika. I'm the director of Nightboat Books, and we are so grateful that you're here in person and for those online. These are intense and painful times, but it is important to be together in poetry and protest. And I want to tell you that the Nightboat staff and board thought it was important to join onto the Palestinian campaign for the academic and cultural boycott of Israel, PACB. And I want to invite you to a global solidarity reading a week from today. Details will be on our website on Monday. 25 global presses will be joining for a 24-hour reading. And I can't really think of two better poets to read during this volatile and painful time. And I am so thrilled that Jackie Wang and Eileen Myles are here. Huge thanks to them for being here. I want to thank, this is our last reading at Segue for the season. We are sad to say goodbye. And I want to thank James Sherry for inviting us to curate these last 2 months. And I want to thank all that helped make this reading possible, including Lonely Christopher of Segue, the Artist Pace staff, and my wonderful co-workers and co-curators. Lena Bergamini and Gia Gonzalez have been steadfast and incredible. And I also want to thank other Nightboat team members who have hosted readers in the last 2 months, including Emily Bark-Brown, who's here tonight, Paloma St. Denis Lopez, Kit Schluter, and Dante Silva. And for those of you, I hope you'll come back for Segue, which resumes Saturday, December 3rd with curation by Roof Books. And now to introduce Jackie Wang will be my colleague, Kit Schluter. Please welcome Kit.
Let's see. What a turnout, holy cow. Thank you, Stephen, Eileen, Jackie, Nightboat, everyone who's here. I don't know how I ended up in front of you and for this like monumentous event, but I'm introducing Jackie. And I was reading through Jackie's new book today, Alien Daughters Walk into the Sun, fresh from semiotext. Something I've always really admired about Jackie is how each project seems to embody and very profoundly something completely different about the psyche and about the human experience, about Jackie. The Sunflower, Cast a Spell to Save Us from the Void, is a book of dreams. It's a book of, it's spit out of the experience of being an analysand, psychoanalysis. The unconscious is impish, unloosed, raw, provocative, irreverent. It has such sensitivity to social movements, such humor about political movements, and that's something I like about Jackie's work, the humor and humility that runs through all of it. On the other hand of the dreamer, we have the scholar, we have the voracious reader. Jackie once told me that she'll read up to 8 hours a day, having the computer voice speak to her at like 2 times, 3 times speed, just so she can keep up this like juggernaut propulsion of reading and learning and metabolizing theory and data. And I think most of us would say we wish we could do either of those things with the ease that Jackie does, and she does them both with such incredible grace and ease and depth. And this new book, Alien Daughters Walk into the Sun, is a collection of essays from Tumblr, if you remember what that was, zines going way back. And it reminded me that in, I think it was 2010, I was driving through New Orleans and I was at this house, a punk house, and the living room, it had a hole in the floor, and there were these chickens that were, it just went straight to the dirt in the backyard, and there were these chickens jumping up and down. And on the wall, they had a big bookshelf, and there were all these Jackie Wang chapbooks on the wall. And that was like when I heard about Jackie. And these kids were like, you need to read Jackie Wang. I was like, okay. And then I met Jackie, and I was like, I needed to read Jackie Wang. And those are a lot of that work is here. It's early work. It's like something like a Bildungsroman. It's Jackie traveling in China and getting thrown into a van with punks, driving to a beach to watch a meteor shower, getting thrown around by waves, learning about life, growing up, being a 20-something. It's very beautiful, raw, emotional, and smart. And anyways, this is all to say that we're basically getting to the point where I could just come up here and be like, well, Jackie Wang needs no introduction. So Jackie Wang needs no introduction.
I can't believe how much taller you are than me, Kit. So thank you so much for joining Eileen and I tonight. It's been a completely horrible time. I don't know how you all are feeling, but I haven't been sleeping, and I've been glued to the news cycle and out at protests, and even thinking about what's happening now with all the ICU patients in the hospital in Gaza City dying, and the people being bombed in southern Gaza. It's just horrific. So keep the energy up and keep going to demos. I was radicalized during the anti-war movement post 9/11, during the war on terror. And I remember when I was in high school, rounding up all my friends to go protest George W. Bush in Newport Richey, Florida. And it was so depressing to see that there were huge, huge demonstrations, and still it didn't stop the invasion of Iraq. So we have to keep the energy up and maintain the vigor that we have right now. So I'm also really grateful to be a part of this reading series curated by my publisher, Nightboat. And I was very happy to see that Nightboat signed on to the boycott. So it's a huge honor to be here. I have a book that's coming out on Tuesday, Alien Daughters Walk into the Sun, an almanac of extreme girlhood. I've been calling it my punk rock juvenilia. And I really think I actually pitched this book idea to Semiotext before Carceral Capitalism came out with Semiotext. And Chris Kraus, she kind of saw the trajectory. She's like, no, you have to do Carceral Capitalism first, and then we'll do this book. So the first piece that appears in this book was written 15 years ago. So that's how long this book has been in the making. And it came about, the idea to collect these writings came about after I received an email from the writer and poet Banu Kapil in 2011, and she prophesied that I would make this book. There's actually a screenshot of the email in the actually the very first page of the book. So in the email from Banu, she says, I think you're going to make a huge book, an almanac for extreme girlhood. So that is the book that is coming out on Tuesday. Semiotext graciously ship me a box of books before the pub date, because I told my editor, Hetty, I'm reading with Eileen Myles. I need to have some books ready. So I carried them from Boston in this suitcase with a broken wheel. So if I can get rid of these fucking books, I will be so relieved. All right, so this piece that I'm going to read first is titled Aliens as a Form of Life, Imagining the Avant-Garde. And this actually appeared in an anthology that was co-edited by my best friend, Lily Huang. and it is written as an epistolary letter to Lily addressing the question of accessibility in writing. Hey, Lily. Isn't it funny that before I knew you, I wrote an epistolary review of your book, The Evolutionary Revolution, for Baum, and now I know you and am writing an epistolary essay for your anthology. It's always been difficult for me to write to an abstract audience. It's always been difficult for me to write to an abstract audience, to write into a void without a specific occasion for enunciation, some kind of performative context, a person towards whom I am permitted to speak. I write to you because you are co-editing this book on the avant-garde, because you are my alien sister, and aliens have a lot to do with the avant-garde. The other day, you came to my house with a gift, a little boy's blue t-shirt depicting an astronaut. The t-shirt made you think of me because you know I like space, and I like space because I like aliens. I like aliens not only because I am one, but also because I enjoy imagining other forms of life. In the photo, I am with my kind, fellow travelers of universes yet unknown. And there's a photo of me with aliens at the UFO Museum in Roswell, New Mexico. And actually, I really blend in very well with the aliens. Right before I left New Mexico, I went to the International UFO Museum and Research Center in Roswell with Dylan. Though the museum itself was shitty, cluttered with information, disorganized, I left feeling that representations of aliens are an index of human imagination. They represent our desire for new forms. But what has always confused me about depictions of aliens in movies and books is this. Aliens could look like anything, and yet we represent them as creatures close to humans. The aliens at this museum had 2 legs, 2 eyes, a mouth. Their form was essentially human. I wondered, is this the best we can come up with? It is true that all we can do, or is it true that all we can do when imagining a new form of life is take the human form, fuck with the proportions, enlarge the head, remove the genitals, slenderize the body, and subtract a finger on each hand? Is it out of narcissism that we construct their image and our likeness? From an evolutionary perspective, there is a statistical probability that any aliens that might be out there don't look like us, as they have been evolving apart from us in a different environment and under different conditions for many years. We strain to imagine foreignness, but we don't get very far from what we know. But my alien is more of what's possible. It is a shapeshifter, impossibly large and yet as small as the period at the end of this sentence. My alien communicates in smells and telepathic song and weeping and chanting and yearning and the sensation of failure and empathic identification and beatitude. My alien is singular and plural and has the consciousness of fungus. And every night, instead of sleeping, it dies, and in the morning is resurrected. And all the aliens of the species I have just created live on edge because they never know when the death of their loved one is the real death, the final death. The alien as it exists in our imagination is a liminal creature existing at the threshold of what is familiar and what is imaginatively possible, but not yet, both formally recognizable and always somehow strangerly. Sometimes sitting before a blank page, I get a rush just thinking anything is possible. Why is it that everything I write fails to capture the range of what is possible? I think we could write anything, and yet we don't. Whenever I'm at a poetry reading, I think the same thing. We could do anything, and yet we dutifully perform this boring ritual that I guess I'm doing. Why is it that we piously adhere to these stale forms? Why, when you encouraged me to submit to your anthology, did I draft 2 other essays that were dreadfully boring? I could write anything here. I could be wacky as hell. I could go outside, kick over a garbage can, speak in numbers, and call the whole thing a poem. But something stops me. The question, why, stops me. I used to live my life according to why not? And things were more exciting. Today, I practiced why not? After waking up this morning, I had a thought. Should I go to church? I haven't been to a Catholic Mass in over 10 years, but I figured I'd check it out, as I have been thinking lately that it's a good idea to believe in God. But what is the form of the everything entity from whom I desperately desire a warm embrace? God could look like anything, and yet we make her into a white man. God, like the alien, reveals our inability to stray too far from identifiable forms. When I was a child, I believed I was an alien. I think it had something to do with being mixed race. If I was the progeny of beings of 2 discrete forms, then what was I? I felt I did not belong anywhere. I know you have felt this too, particularly around white people of a bourgeois upbringing. I know we have sometimes felt like 2 aliens stranded on an island of normality. This world is a hostile place for aliens, but we must not wear humanoid bodysuits to dodge attention. We must inhabit our alienness. I could write anything here, and yet I can't. I cannot hand you an egg and say, hey, Lily, can you put this in your anthology? It's cosmic. I am constrained by the task and the people involved in it. Because my work is relational, and art that is relational is determined in part by what it is in relation to. It is out of love that I clarify myself, that I find a form to transmit these scattered nothings to you. Some writers eschew accessibility on the grounds that it imposes a consensus reality and is thus tyrannical. But there's tenderness in the impulse to clarify ourselves for an other, for you, even if it means that in anticipating what forms might be legible to another, we are circumscribed. I call this the paradox of the audience. The creator is both profoundly limited and animated, read enabled, opened by the receivers. The constraints are more pronounced when the audience is abstract because in such situations, the creator must adopt the lowest common denominator form. Every situation that is concrete involves some measure of negotiation. Therefore, it is not true that anything is possible, but we can always do better, cultivate wilder and more feral imaginations by building spaces that open us creatively. Though the avant-garde is generally conceptualized in terms of formal innovation, I prefer to think of it in terms of space. Our mad pursuit of the new, of aesthetic originality and novelty, has made us neurotic. Perhaps it is time we redirect our energies into collaboratively creating material, psychic, and symbolic spaces where non-normative activity and artistic production can take place. These spaces will constantly need to be fortified, and to properly fortify these spaces, we must identify which forces, mechanisms, and institutions foreclose possibilities. To create a space for the imagination is to create a container for the uncontaining and unleashing of desire. The container should facilitate generative encounters and provide a ground on which energizing and magical experiences can take place. For me, art is always what happens during an encounter. For writing is first and foremost energy and connective tissue, a relation. It is not the textual objects, but the bonds that matter. So long as we think of artistic production in terms of the individual rather than the collective body, the isolated product will be prioritized over the relation. I want to create this space with people, with you, because without it, I am lost. My whole life, I've been looking for a place to call home. What's a wacky brown femme dyke gal like me to do, to go? I keep hoping the aliens will come back for me and take me home. When they beam me up to their ship, I will look into their bug eyes and ask, why did you leave me behind? And we will travel by wormhole to a place light years away. But I don't want to go out on a sad note. So I must remind myself that the astronaut on the t-shirt you gave me is not a weary traveler, but an explorer of the unknown, the possible. When I think of outer space, the scale, the distance between galaxies and stars and celestial bodies, it really puts things into perspective. From Big Bang to me, there is a path, but it could have gone any number of directions, never to arrive at me sitting in my little adobe house at this moment in time. What is the statistical probability that I should exist? It is almost impossible that I should exist, and yet I do. I should not be alive. It is a miracle that I am alive and that you are alive and that whoever is reading this is alive. It is even a miracle that out of all the sperm that could have won the race to the egg, I won. I was only half an eye then. I think it might be my greatest achievement, winning the race so that I might live. Though the actualization of one out of everything possible will always exclude every other possibility, and though everything that is not is always greater than what is, we are. You are this primary potential, manifest and true. Love, Jackie. So Also, I want to, that was such a beautiful introduction that Kit did, and it was very special for me because Kit designed this book, and when I knew Kit was going to be the book designer, I was so happy, and he did such an amazing job with it, so thank you, Kit. All right, so this last essay I'm going to read is titled, "What is this orgy of song?" What is this conspiracy of voice, the friend's voice who sings, this time, William Blake's laughing song? When the painted birds laugh in the shade, when our table with cherries and nuts is spread, come live and be merry and join with me to sing the sweet chorus of ha ha he. This is my friend Ben Lorber turned William Blake's poems into songs. What is this orgy of song in the canopy above my head? What is the lightness of walking alone outside? Or what I find when I force myself to stop reading and walk across the bridge over the Charles River at sunset? The breeze becomes an analgesic. The cop inside my head is gagged, and the light on the water mimics a 4th of July sparkler that sparkles forever as a loop of light growing in the mind of the universe, a pulsating mass of iridescent cerebral matter, which any of you can plug into at any time just by accepting that perdition is not where you are condemned to dwell, that at any moment you can will the cosmic umbilical cords to drop from the light mine for you to plug into your foreheads. So it was all just a joke? My head played on me? Hell? Hell was just a joke I could unbelieve? In the poem, what was it I said? You do undo. My being, invaginated by the levity of stealing all the food I can while sauntering through the party in my machine gun leggings. What is the nature of your being? Juyeon describes me as a comedian, but why is it that some people think of me as dour, joyless, depressive? White people? Well, I guess not all of them. Memory of a conversation I had in Claire's car about substance, Spinoza, friendship, and bad mixtures. What mixes well with me is sun, but it's difficult to reconcile this with being a creature of the night. On the nighttime walk to the library, I close my eyes and am impaled by the light. The street lights are false moons. Behind the tree, the real moon. Through a window in the science center, I see a man looking into a microscope. Above him, a room in which the sign, lasers at use, is plastered. The bio and cyberneticians are at work. I feel them everywhere in Cambridge engineering our collective death. Around the corner, a teenage boy folds his apron in the banh mi food truck. His shift has just finished, and soon he'll be home or in the bed of a lover. I remember feeling inside my head, but then getting hit by the sun from behind a tree. I looked up into the song. The wind breathes yellow rain. It falls from branches as bits of yellow confetti cut out of construction paper, shards of yellow littering the campus. The leaves stick to the bottom of the shoes of the students and are dragged into the library. The trees cry light so that we may be happy. Are you happy? The German mathematician walks by. He seems not to recognize me. I want to find Elle, but I haven't got my phone on me. The yellow leaves transport me to the back seat of Nat's car, sitting next to Dana, pointing out the leaves to him, the way they catch the light on their way down. To be on the road, it felt like an adolescent summer, my last week of freedom. This was like literally like the day before I started grad school. So I was like, my last week of freedom. But for the punks, the summer never ends. There's no back to school to punctuate leisure time, for time does not revolve around the beginning and end of a semester. And so on the same day I start school, I receive a postcard from Steve of a picture of him and Julian hopping trains across the BC Rockies. But these short train hopping and sailing excursions are just a precursor to Steve's main adventure, sailing to Hawaii, where I'm sure Moxie will meet him on an app coding trip. Okay, so this app coding trip became Signal. It's like historic moment. I didn't know. I was like, I don't know, like my punk friends are going to code. I want to write Steve, take me with you, but there is no return address. He's on the move. When Dana asked me what I want to be when I grow up, I said, a traveler. In the postcard photo, both Steve and Julian are wearing black jackets. Steve is doing a peace sign and Julian is flicking off the camera. Are they caricaturing their respective temperaments? I remember the summer I met them both. I remember somehow finding my way to Julian's house through Moxie, as I did not know him then. And as we sat in his living room talking, he told me stories about his travels across Central America, and then it clicked. He was the author of the only zine I brought with me that summer, a zine I randomly plucked from the New College Zine Library, One-Way Ticket. 31 and 32 years old and still oogles, Steve jokes in his letter. Julian is in a PhD program now, studying continental philosophy, still falling in love like it's the first time. Maybe it's okay to take a break from concepts, theories, ideas, even literature, to try to find my way back to the non-teleological event of writing, a writing that is comfortable enough with itself to be simple, to just feel out the texture of a walk or being with others, small observations. So when people ask me what I'm working on, I can say nothing. I have no grand statements for you. I am a life like you, and this is about that. As I observe the uneven brick sidewalk of Oxford Street, I remembered the sensation of what was once the most distinct of all feelings for me, gratitude. It seemed to radiate from everything. I love strangers. I love to watch the way they were present with each other. The more confused they appeared to me, the more I loved them. I loved the backs of their heads while walking down crowded streets. I love Matthias for sitting with me in the Quimming cafes, letting me in against his better judgment. I love the dog shit paved streets of Govan, Glasgow, the majesty of Buchanan Street, and the thoroughfares of foreign towns, walking down them in the warped consciousness of toothaches. Busby Station, When Juyun said it, our train rides came back to me. The timbre of a certain accent heard over an intercom, seared into our minds. I even loved when Nemo, the Dalmatian, R.I.P., stole the fruitcake in Nosh and Cloudberry's living room. I love the steam rising from the old houses on a rare sunny day in Glasgow. Today, the sun was bright, but it rained for only an hour. And this hour of rain was synchronized exactly with my counseling session. From the 4th floor of the Harvard University Health Services building, I watched a storm rage and violently whip the leaves of a tree while the psychologist asked me questions about my depression. I even loved everything bad, for it was part of the whole of life. But this mentality also manifests as a self-destructive inability to stay mad at anyone. Because she was real to me, I could not hate her. Was the rain sent to cleanse me? Genuflect because there is gratitude, an all-pervasive feeling of contrition. Look at how my hatred softens. It is supple like silken tofu. My skin betrays me by failing as a barrier. But what does this ineptitude of skin allow me? I love coasting down the bridge into Lido Key. I love the weeping willows of Mesilla. I love my spice shelf in the house I lived in with P. I love the smell of the cool air coming through the cracks of my Good View porch room, walking down the snowy Hamden street on my birthday. I have no grand statements for you. I have a bowl of pennies, some sentences and half sentences, scraps of patterned origami paper. I have the party-colored lights on the bridge into Poughkeepsie, whispers in the backseat of a car, daydreams of lives epically lived, but epic in feeling, not wealth or importance. I have a pigeon crashing into a glass walkway, falling to the ground and dying, twitching on the ground, the death throes, the way the pigeon stared at me right before dying. Elle, my dad, and I were all deeply disturbed. As we pried ourselves from the distressing scene, my father told us the story of the man who killed the last passenger pigeon, how these pigeons were once so abundant they blotted out the sky. We were looking for a place to eat. There is history in every micro-transaction, in glances exchanged between strangers, and even in the tear I left on the Woodbury table, the way the reflection of the light in the tear made it look like an eyeball with a laser pupil. The night will be good to you if you can resist the urge to blot out feeling with molecules that will make life bearable but less round. There is a night waiting for you where you kill the fear that has been holding you hostage. Loving as an owl, watching at night from a tree, a boreal creature, we are made of feather, bliss, borrowed light. Write yourself into a state again, love and then sleep, some backtracking, but all is not lost. You are free. But for how long? Life becomes this mythology of the everyday made by freaks on their lonely, unscripted journeys. Thank you.
We're going to take a 1-minute pause and be back with Eileen Myles. Okay, everyone, we're going to try to start again. If you could take your seat, that would be great. And you can buy a book at the end, lots of books. I just want to say thank you so much, Jackie, for that amazing reading. And I think we just give you one more round of applause because that was great. Next year will mark the 50th anniversary of Eileen Myles' arrival in New York. They landed in Lower Manhattan when rents were cheap and there was time to waste on poetry. They took classes with Ted Berrigan and Alice Notley at the Poetry Project and found their voice. They have published a new book of poems every few years, starting from A Fresh Young Voice from the Plains in 1981, through to I Must Be Living Twice, New and Selected Poems, and now to A Working Life, published just this year. The new book consists of a lot of poems and has the wonderful quality of serving as a daybook, a glimpsing into the life and the mind of the writer, the human. The poems are filled with people, lovers, friends, and of course, the delicious honey who brings landscape into Eileen's life. Eileen is here too, the persona, the presidential candidate, the last member of the New York school. The syntax of the poem, slip, drop, slide. The poems often appear in columns of just a couple of words a line. There is little in the way of punctuation, but we follow the moves, the line breaks, the spaces, the enjambment. There's a compression and elision alongside the jokes and the languor of writing in bed. There is a lot of coffee. There's also protest of the militarized US-Mexico border, of the heedless destruction of East River Park. The poems came like the rain last night, in little waves, varying intensities, but always with their unique music. I love this baseline of Eileen's, the poems a constant flow and a from which all their projects are built, including the monumental pathetic literature now out in paperback, and the prose books, Chelsea Girls, The Inferno, The Importance of Iceland, and Afterglow. The poems allow us to capture the daily rhythm of Eileen's language, the ear and the voice. The page is something flickering and permanent. Dear Eileen, your color is indeed orange. Congratulations on your amazing new orange book and an early happy birthday. Please welcome Eileen Myles to Segue.
Well, thank you, Stephen. And Jackie, it's so great to read with you. I was very excited and nervous in a good way, us reading here together. And I love this space and Segue and Nightboat. I just feel like we have and all you guys, it's like so many cool things have chimed in to make a nice, amazing, and a fucking shitty moment to have a really a good moment in the middle of it. You know, I think there's some French expression, I won't pretend to speak French, but it means the good chance and the bad chance. You know, and I think this is that. So, and it's, I guess I've had a year. I found myself thinking about what readings are and stuff because I've had a year where I had 2 new books come out. It was like too much, and I just tore my ass off. And then I, you know, and since then I've been sort of not reading from those books and reading new work. But then already, you know, you read the new work, and the next time you read it, is it new work now? You know, and so it's just been, and then it's such a weird. This moment is so strange in terms. I almost feel like talking feels more right than reading, you know. So that any reading, it doesn't matter what you're reading in a way. It's just like feels like how you're reading or how you're holding it or something. And you know, and so I just did a little tour recently where the first place I read was Brandeis, and I thought, what the fuck am I going to read at Brandeis, you know? And I didn't, you know, it's sort of like I have made it, you know, like I think it was who said it? Fred Moten was on some podcast was talking about, you know, you do politics where you work, you know, you just bring it to wherever you are, you know, and that seemed right. So I've been, you know, when I do readings, I'll talk about Palestine and my feelings, you know, but I was just unsure. Brandeis, I was just like, and so I wound up talking about home, you know, I just did this whole, because I just feel like home is the fucking issue. That's part of, I think, the unconscious of this war. Or who's home? Who has the right to be home? You know, and it's just, and so I wound up reading. I have this old poem, and I hope it called "The Guest" that I wrote 30 years ago because I lived in P-Town with a girlfriend for some part of the '90s, and then we broke up, and it was her house, so I had to get the fuck out. And so it was a breakup and a move out, you know, but really fast. So this poem somehow describes the feeling of something about right now, and then I'm going to read some other new poems, and I got a couple of prose things, and I think we're watching the time in some intense way. Something's going to happen in the building if we don't get out of here at the right time. So this is called "The Guest." Rilke went to artist colonies. My body has no friend. The ocean is many maneuvering things, a wet thing to summon up the chill in me, flocks of breath. The ghostly youth who fluttered around the dimpled flesh of middle age and then resuming to be my own cigarette and matrimonial. I'm not pretending to be. What a blast of white light we were. I'll sit closer to the heat and my hands become true. I truly have given up on handsome, animal pleased, remembered the rumpled sheets. I have never loved anyone. The photograph that returned in the mail, the woman laughing and heaving, green and lavender, holding a basket. Couldn't believe your calendar, your great train of events. Certainly you were loving someone, going to meet anyone's family. Little black key to Soho Grand. There's a slot next to my bed apart from furniture. The spot is me. After we bought the house, only the lousy little apartment had sex. You putting this silly book in a nook just like I put a stamp on you and mailed you to hell. What's it like there? Your radiance pouring over whatever the email brings. I hate my autonomy, cold knuckles. Let's face it, Nick, I write shit. And Michael painting up in the air and Marilyn gravitating to its hyannis. My friends, where is our table? Is memory enough? I've lost a good word for nose and my face is Helen's, a part of nature. The sweet whistle is a cousin of the desperate sound of a storm at sea. My thigh planted 4 feet from the heat and the tugging impulse to be. Overcome in a hotel in Boston by terrible heat. Susan is my friend. You can't go on your girlfriend's book tour. What about menopause? Susan said, I will be in New York. We need a new population there. Ivy League girls flooding the artist colonies. The toilets broke, putting the final touches on your, I'm going to explain, well, no, not this. Putting the final touches on your hand-sewn manuscript made out of your mother's old clothes. Tim, I want to explain this. Tim wearing a woman's hat that final year, an Easter bonnet, really a band, little purple flowers, an old lady's hat like a rug with a muscle. And there's a thing of, people of my generation, and, Catholics, you would get like new Easter outfit, and you would get an Easter hat. I mean, it was just such a weird thing in the 50s and 60s. But this was the poet Tim Dugos, who was our beloved friend who died of AIDS in 1990. And he just was a very fun, he somehow got his hand on one of these really 60s Easter bonnets. And it was just like an oval that had a muscle and flowers on the outside, and he had it on his head, and he was he's pretty late in HIV, so he was really skinny looking, and he loved to put this hat on when we would go out to lunch and make this very weird, it was very comic, but it was pure Tim Dugos. He was just like a very funny, sweet guy. Like a rug with a muscle. I tucked my shirt and stuffed it in the nook with the poet's small book. Don't you know that you're the horse rearing through your life? I invented rooms for you. The veins of the beach running through your ears and your eyes, head. I was your landscape. Here I am, a cold chunk of marble, pencil drum. I can go see Morgan at the craft fair, bought some new cups, blue. Bring me back that blue cup that I smashed on the way to LA. Oh, this is really, a page is gone. A page is, but I wish I knew, and I almost brought the book, but I thought I can't sell this book because I only have one copy. Bring me back that blue cup that I smashed on the way to LA, and it's something like I fucking something. And then we go for a whole page, and then we go with pieces of paper that distantly own these men and their work, the insulting piece of meat the daughter carves, rear up. The first man that loved me sent mail to you. She said, thank you for the delivery. Said stars and the strangeness that wood has eyes that cry for their missing limbs. I fear burial, lost, the spoiled waters of love's foiled charge. My warm flesh slaps your fevered white face goodbye. My body has no friend. That's it. Thanks. So these guys have done this book of AI poems. You know this book, right? And it's just very weird. They get so much money. They get more money than any poet I ever knew in advance for that. Disaster. And they asked poets, including me, to read it and then tell them something. Anyway, I agreed to meet these guys. I have actually read in New York once before and told the same story. Sorry. So I agreed to meet these guys because I got my car got towed and I got a giant ticket. And I said, if you would pay this ticket in cash, I will meet you. And they were like, if we can say that in the introduction, fine, And I was like, sure. So this is, I'm being redundant, but I think it makes the poem work. It's called Feeder. The embodiment of the poet is the point, and that's why it's okay for you to pay my parking ticket, and especially to pay in cash. Not because of the cute anecdote about the car and the rats, or because rats ate all the wires in my car, which was part of how I got the ticket, but. And the rats and the rental and the dog surgery and parking in front of the hydrant and getting towed and getting a ticket for that, and you paid it. I will pay the ticket on my computer, but I will buy food with your cash. It's why nobody likes to support poetry. They'll just use it to pay their rent, which is right. Survival is my art, a violent act it is. Thank you. And this is called Home, announcing my presence through a coven of candles and repeated weak tea. Get up and dust something. You were here, and now I'm the naked spot on the thought. He said the discourse is, and I'm obsessed with this line. Supposedly Foucault said this, and Samuel Delaney said that Foucault said this. I'm not much of a theory person, but when I latch onto a piece of theory, I'm like a dog, you know? He said the discourse is unconscious or something like that. And wait for the checks to roll in. I need more candles and a better app, and shit, I just broke the wick. I liked his show about so much violence after so much loss. He was John Wick, you like John? He was like a killing machine, but you kind of understand. Like, my house is breathing, it gets me, my dog is breathing. When he said organic could be part of the pitch, I said, okay. I said essential, like sitting in a chair. He said, you're already there. And this is a piece of prose, which is a part of a novel I'm working on. And the only thing you need to know is that that I wrote something for a very mainstream publication. And I thought, look at me, you know, I got to, and they killed it, you know. So I've become obsessed with it and them. And it's weird. And I've canceled all my subscriptions lately. It's been so much fun to like, New York Times, New Republic, Atlantic, because they're all pro-Israel. They all like act like because they just copied the government. But weirdly, I've kept this one journal, and my fictional name for it is Glazier's Quarterly. You know, like a little pottery monthly or something. But anyway, so that's what's. But this was a dream about the piece that was killed. So it's called, and then it goes into many other things. It's called Tree. I feel raped by my intelligence. I was dreaming of pictures of my walk, scrolling and unscrolling like mountains and rivers without end, as if I had presented the Glazier's Quarterly with my cut out, pasted together photographs of the geology of the walk. And I would mail or email a scan of this to them and said, this is the audio of my walk. My mind hurts to think of it, but I can see it as one long winding stone, a jetty, not of words, but of pictures. And tonight at the courthouse, there was an enormous, we're kind of in Marfa in this, we're in Texas here. There was an enormous tree, and I wanted to touch it. The problem is prose doesn't stop, so you never get a sip. I wanted to touch it and kiss and thank it. It was so old, and I was traumatized by its fact. And all my writing is this real and terrible. I am writing pictures of my walk all the time, the shitting and the hurt, and I undress everyone with my terrible self. Each time I'm asked to write about an artist, I give them terrible me, the guts in the trunk of my tree. When I was young and still living in Arlington, they didn't want to see me. Once in college, I told them about being home, and it was terrible. And I went to school and stayed around, and the boys told us it was so great to date and fuck women like us who were them, and they sang our songs. People didn't like it, the film, because it doesn't show an ugly woman getting raped. It was a beautiful woman, an actress. It was sexualized and it was stylized, and it wasn't war at all. But only the actress could stand to do it, and only the woman who was a film director could make a film about raping women in war. And all the men couldn't make a film about raping women in war. And what do you want a camera on the actual fact? The man wants to rape the woman. He doesn't want to get filmed, and she doesn't want to get filmed, and she doesn't want to get raped at all. And maybe he will tell the story about her getting raped, but he wasn't there, but he can imagine it just because it is in his blood like it is in hers. So it's terrible that she wants to show it. And it's terrible of us to want to show her showing it with the young woman who has made her first animated film about love, and she is asked to go before we show the reality that is going on. They felt we used her to get them there to see rape. What kind of war is on them, since we are on their land that we took and we came here from someplace else? And I, in my success, have bought a house, and he worked on my house and fucked it up, and he wanted me to pay him for that. He was even charging me more because finally I didn't have a right to be here. I climbed and I climbed like a tree, and I didn't have a right to be here, but I am. It is my success, and there was a war here, and it is still being fought, and slowly the town is owned by invaders who come here. And the girl was invited to show her film, and afterward we showed war and rape, and that is what we have done. I have done that. With my silver tongue, I got up on stage and said that the girl is what we are making safe, and now we are going to show what we are protecting the girl from. But it is us, and we have invaded her and her home, and they were mad, and my friends really got the brunt of this because they really live here, and people will talk to them, but they won't talk to me. They will talk to them because I don't really live here, only 7 years, and not all the time. Only tonight did I see the old tree and feel the horror of myself. I thought about the people who bring people here, like me, to live in a beautiful house and see how beautiful it is here. And I did, and I saw how beautiful it was, that I wanted to stay and live here all of the time because I have to go away and get things so I can come here and keep getting sap from my tree and keep bleeding my life on the page. But I found the house that was already too expensive for the man to hire to work on the house, who is from here, that I had the fight with. I bought the house and I paid him to work on it, and he fucked up. I had to get a lawyer, and she was from a ranching family, and she explained to him how it was, and we made a deal, and that was over, and somebody else finished the job, and I live here now more and more. It feels like my home because it is run by people who feel like the people who ran the town I grew up in, not who ran the town, but who did all the jobs like my mother did in the bank, and they were nice, and I feel like I am in my old town here, and I wonder if they can even feel that about me, that is my hope. I want it to be nice for everyone because it is my home. I've lived here 7 years. The people who brought me here give money to people who do this that I'm doing right now, pouring my sap on paper, and I have heard that they were thinking they would give me one of those awards for having done this for a long time, which is entirely true. And I got very excited about this, though I wasn't supposed to know. I waited and waited, and they gave it to this other guy, and he is a man of color, and he had been a soldier and has written about that. Not many people who do this have been soldiers. Many write about it, but not many have done it. And the fact that he is of color means that he's lived a life I have not lived, and he is probably more entitled to honors than I am at this time in our life. Have I even had a life, really? There are no children, and I am one of the ones who fuck their own kind of people with genitals people imagine, with genitals like my own, which is sort of disgusting when you think of it. Whereas it is not disgusting to have the genitals of a woman and have a man put his penis inside you, even forcefully. It's increasingly becoming true that that is not the worst thing in the world. What I am is. And look at me, wanting to show war in a place that I do not come from, reminding people that the land they live on has been taken away from them by war, and they don't want to think about it. And I have come to their town and made them think about it. I am a little crazy when you think about it. I can see the old tree, and I remember it in my dreams, the picture of my story about the walk. I dreamed it, and I'm living in a stolen house, and I've learned how to steal the money, but I have not learned how not to talk about the crime. Yet there are people, other writers who are like me, who want to be near the genitals people also imagine I have or did at some time, until I decided it was not like that. And I have anyone's genitals. And when I go to the store, they can see I'm an old woman, and I get mad because I think I am anyone, at the very least male, but then I insist on writing about a man forcefully putting his penis inside me, and I use my own name, and it's obviously true, and I talk about the insides of my family and the terrible cruelty and love in there. I cannot ever stop talking about I cannot ever stop talking in the way of the poor, complaining until the day I die. And everyone wants to forget the rape and the war, and they don't want to think about the person who spends years wanting to put their hands in their mouth on the genitals of people, especially ones who are younger than you. And you say, you are anyone, and what did you expect? Never mind, the work you have done, the whole world begins to sound like my mother, who knew the rules, which is never to say what the body and the trunk is feeling. My mother, the old tree, running through my body right now, if I press hard enough on paper, it is my mother weighing things and keeping time and counting everything and saying too much. You are too old and you can't have that. Why do you want that now? It's too late. She had said, you have already had your life, so why not start a family with me now? It is what I want, and you have already had your life. Get in the car, now let's start. And when I would hurt my foot, this is a girlfriend now if it's unclear, and when I would hurt my foot, she would walk fast and laugh and talk about the men who wanted to fuck her when she would ride horses with them. She would like to come back and ride horses with them. She wouldn't have to fuck them. She could take their lessons. She was great like that. She was strong. That's what it was like to be inside, winning all the time. She liked to talk about how fast she was. She was just faster than everyone else. Why would that make you mad? Why would you get mad at that? I was never allowed to meet her mother. That was the rule, because her mother has the same old long trunk, though she liked men, even though she had given up on sex. She was her daughter, and yet if the mother, not me, the daughter said her mother would have to think about her daughter's genitals differently, the problem with not letting men put their penises inside you, either supposedly consensually, but if the whole world prefers you to have a man putting his penis inside you, how is that consensual? But there it is, forceful also, and that is very different. But the daughter's genitals, it is a different kind of force. If the mother doesn't have sex anymore, it is somehow known that if she was having sex, men would be putting their genitals inside her, and that is good. And meeting me would put her inside of her daughter's genitals. What makes the daughter think about the mother's genitals? Anything at all. The woman now is involved with the man, and she wrote me to tell me that she would be coming to town with the man. But at the moment she wrote, she was in New Mexico where the man was meeting the mother. And the mother was thinking about the man putting his genitals inside the woman, her daughter. And that was good. And she wanted me to know how that relaxed everyone. Nobody was being forced to think about my genitals and would I like to get a cup of coffee or something when she came here. I couldn't stop seeing and thinking of the audio of the tree, which was stone, which was pictures, I mean under everything. The people who brought their money are taking their penis out of the town now, and everyone's sad and are thinking of ways they could leave some of their dick just a little way in. And I'm thinking, couldn't you just leave a little puddle of it outside my house? You already fucked me, you brought me here, and so I made public statements. You were so great, but can't you just leave us like that? I mean, leave me, though I imitated you. I liked it so much with my car and my house and my growing tree. I asked for a chair, and they gave me that, so that a piece of their money is still growing in my house. And I learned that he put a child inside her like she wanted it, and everyone is glad, even me. And I bought a rug to put under the chair, and I will put my feet on it now, and I will grow. That's like, how am I doing? So, thank you. I mean, speaking of the discourse being unconscious, I think that was entirely it. This is a poem called Edward Hopper, and this is about the Hopper show. The photos are the reminders of the buildings and the shadows, the sun. Ache the long of her feet and on the bed, the crooked block be behind her head, the indenture of foot press under trees outside red building. So this is just kind of to slow down, kind of feel it, right? Under trees outside red building, her nose looks like his wife, cartoon pipes, Egyptian details on the posts, 3 laps over her head, making bare our wildness, of course, of the clouds smoking out the sun. Do the buildings eat the sky? I can count windows, people like ants, the rough, I think, of New Jersey, a blaring hedge. Tree don't give a damn. The paintings are sets, the humans are things, but living cameras guiding us by their silent, pained presence. Sweet of them to invite us out to real white light today in yummy, hungry New York. In the movement of the finished head, her gender smeared, he drew trans. You were like, not so sure about that one. It was like, I'm going to read a few animal poems, and I just want to say, I mean, I've been obsessed with animals, and on the merch table, there's animal calendars, because if you give money to animals, the calendars and the stickers with your address come. And I just think maybe you'd like an animal calendar for 2024. I got a Sharpie, I'll sign it. That's just free. So, and the other thing, has anybody seen the Killers of Flower Moon, right? Have you seen the Scorsese movie? Which, I mean, I watched the whole 3 hours and I was kind of taken in by it, unlike The Irishman, which I was like, he's so over. But this was pretty good, except that he bookended it with his white self. It was very weird. And so I was like, what else? I mean, then I realized it was the narrative where there was an article in the New Yorker, then there was a book, then there was a movie. This is like the new path. And so I thought, I'm going to read the book and see what the story was. And of course, the story was, the killing of indigenous people who had made any money at all in the early 20th century was just huge. But this quote from the book, which I think really applies to the present moment, it's so incredible. One skeptical, because of course these guys, finally they caught some of the people who did it and they took them to trial. One skeptical reporter noted, the attitude of a pioneer cattleman toward the full-blooded Indian is fairly well recognized. And this is the explanation. A prominent member of the Osage tribe put the matter more bluntly. It is a question in my mind whether this jury is considering a murder case or not. The question for them to decide is whether a white man killing an Osage is murder or merely cruelty to animals. So I found that so not unconscious, and so truly what was so under what we all know about the settling. And I think it's so much what's under the war right now of the massacre is it just doesn't quite matter so much. You can just sort of think about it for a while, and we're in that while, and I think the present is the problem. It's like it's happening now. So yeah. So let me read about animals who I love. This is called Warm Mountains. Well, I'm perched over Paris. I want to say, I'm in a plane. I write a lot of poems on planes. Well, I'm perched over Paris. I want to say hello. The camera on the plane pulls back, and now it's looking on the ocean, and then a list of names. The Pyrenees are dangling down there. Only on a map are mountains flat. I like mountains because they remind me of history, the world getting poured. A mountain is a kind of splash ocean's residue. And I can rise to the plight of the fish. More are killed than anything. I don't know what to do with the endlessness of my feelings. I'm the last one on earth thinking about Orchard, a cruel name for a small dog found in the streets of an unkind city, a dog of no gender, blue-gray, slightly red. And when he was captured by the city for no purpose except this small dog should go there, he was so appalled and confused by this hard cell he found himself in, he peed and pooped on the floor. He's scared, I cried, thinking that would bring him some love. He needed someone to fill out forms and to walk in the door and bring little Orchard home, but he's dead. In a city, a small dog that no one wants gets a needle in his heart. It stops, maybe not right away, but he's tossed in a bag, brought to a crematorium on Long Island that has a blazing fire full of cats and dogs. The city pays them so much to do this terrible burning that some dogs, like Orchard, are covering a debt. Orchard was just weight, like the slight addition of his death helped somebody out in keeping the figures in line. The payment must have a purpose. The further from the dogs, the emptier the line, it all being kept on a computer somewhere that gets erased from time to time because the cheapness of this story, a dog got a pretty name, but no hands come for his warm, pretty shoulder. I've made him a boy with colors in his fur and light in his eyes, and he would run. I think I should read. I have a couple more poems, but I have a feeling. I think. Okay, I have a poem that intends to deal with politics, but I'm not sure that it works. And then I have a story. What do you think I should read? Poem, story. I think story. Yeah, I'm going to work on the poem a little bit. Okay, so this is, and again, are you guys at the Parkview Inn? Anybody? Good. Oh, cool. Okay, so I've never read the story before then. And it's from this same novel, and it's called Early Writing, and it's about writers writing about each other, which we do, And when I wrote it, including myself as a person, there's 4 or 5 people in this story, and 2 of them were alive when I wrote it, and now 2 of them are not alive, which is intense. The thing about being written about that's a problem is that nobody wants you to have the whole thing, to say it. I don't want to be in your reality. I want to be in my girlfriend's, and I want her to be in mine, and I think about a space in which is this sweet overlap. But for instance, I don't want to hear how she talks about our relationship to her friends. Every time I say something about her to my friend on the phone, I think, why is it so easy here to describe what she does, but facing her, my version melts. Writing, however, is the place where we are able to put them inside of our story, so they're like little tiny people in the palm of your hand. I love when they were both writers and we could be in this big story together, and nobody wrote it. The inside was jagged, happy. We all could allude to it in our poems. And one time he told us his fantasies, and they were disgusting. And hers were just like her poems and were filled with compensations for the sparse pleasures of her childhood. And now there was an abundance of people as opposed to the grim few in Brooklyn. I enjoyed being a poet, but even then I wanted a house like the one I have now. I was adamant that I needed to get famous then when I was young. I mean, it's interesting because if that person had gotten what they wanted, I can't even imagine how that would look. It's easy to say I'd be dead, and it might be true. When I think of Kurt's 27-year-old body sprawled on the floor, it just gets weirder and weirder. When I think of Will bleeding out on the bathtub, when I think of Heather leaning forward to her bed, strangling herself, Christina doing the same, Emma with a scarf in Italy, Tootsie, some lonesome place turned blue. I wouldn't have died like them because I kept retracting my wishes, though I may have bumbled into it. So the house I would have bought keeps disappearing with my dead body in it. My dog walks to the door and sees that it's a screen and shuffles back. I've trained her to be like that. I joke with friends that you break their spirit. I'm thinking about the impossibility of telling my young story while I was young. If I wrote anything larger than a poem or did a play again and again, if it was good, or read the poem that brought the house down a second night instead of needing to be different all the time, no, I just thought reaching for success seemed fraudulent. I thought a calculated arrival would never work because my hand would vanish as I was reaching, vanishing back into the mists of my shifting dream. I remember I wanted to be a rake, a large man in a leather jacket, irresistible in his insouciance, French. I couldn't tell my lovers who I was at 31, but in my dream, he grew large. I would write a novel, a soft green story in which everyone I knew had slightly altered names, and I would declare, at least there, who I wanted to be. And I sat down daily in my apartment at my desk, and I deployed the result. Not being satisfied with my house, I built another one, and I could even build another one inside of that. This is that. By the time I was writing my novel about our relationship, it was already losing its elasticity, and there was a need for other projects. I was bringing in the bread in my head. Often the paper I wrote on was used and had some other typing on the other side. My friends were all poets making poetry magazines out of rough, thick paper that received the chemicals and the pounding of the keys to produce magazines. And there were often too many copies of page 63. I wrote on them. And I think I even had extra pages from my own little book, and I would write my novel on the other side so that it indeed really felt like a draft. That paper was too thick to go someplace else. It wanted to be here. I had a way to be away from them now, and not even me, but a person in the future writing like this in a small apartment I made bigger by the effort of returning every day, and it was like building another room or a tunnel to the world. Last winter, she showed me several passages from her novel in which I appear from when she was obsessed with me. I have become in some ways the person I long ago planned to be, but I am not that person. It just works that way, having badly and then repeatedly and then successfully done that, and now here I walk out into the world to be pursued by her and rejecting her and eventually being depicted in print. I read it. First of all, she didn't use page numbers, my total pet peeve, because I want everything to be over all the time. I'm waiting. What is that relationship to pleasure? Is there any? I am releasing and I am counting all the time. I have a phone date in 11 minutes. It's Sunday. I write in little bursts. So I appear in my friend's novel as I bluntly wrote myself, as I appear in the world and am not, and therefore am hiding happily in the house, inside the house, inside the house. But that's not it. That would be too cute. Her writing is very good, and I even think she's learned from me, but not too much. It's all her. That's the thing that's weird about the people who have taught you something and you dwelled for a while in that teaching and that love, and they declare, I taught you nothing. But they tipped your hand and expanded your map. If this doesn't sound like fundraising prose, the horse was gifted with a number of jumps, but it's still the horse. And at first you stop at the jump and say, no, I can't do that. And then you do, and it's odd, but occasionally brilliant. And occasionally it sticks. Your love for a teacher enhances your game. They were not my teachers, they were my lovers. I would go to my house and I would practice for my life. I had a collarless shirt. I wrote 58 pages. I showed it to him. She would not look. Firstly, he was mad and ashamed that I depicted myself as an arrogant and lazy, preening man. Putting him and his wife and his children inside my world was the worst hauteur. What about me, he cried. They were now in my little crystal ball, and I was making those mesmerizing waving hands, being a little swami, and the power of my childhood, indeed the magic I saw, had always been coming from the East. I was nature boy. He would not look inside my ball and see the tiny family, and his dream, which was merely patriarchal, you're predictable, was even worse. There was only one man in the family, and it was him. But I was cute and 6 feet tall and lazy. I wore a leather jacket. I had bangs. I was a mooch. They were utterly charmed by me, and that was my hustle. No, 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 he screamed. He sneered that the writing was bad, so terrible. It's a miracle. I realized that deep in my archive is a folder that contains this very bad novel. If I have a bad day here, most days increasingly magic and trippy and not real, I am growing my life. I am growing another. I want my writing to be transporting. I want to take you away. But on bad days, I am writing exactly like that large, lazy, seductive man until he had to do a thing. And my poorly named characters, ho-ho, were a beloved jumble by confused, hungover, and amphetamine-driven. I was hungry. I was young. I didn't even know how to sit down. I watch a cat walking stealthily across my yard, and they know a dog is living here who is sleeping right next to me in the tiny writing house. The bad writing is the sleeping dog that just doesn't know, and what's swift and good is a smart tippy-toeing cat that manages to make their way across the yard without a ruckus. And here, all here, now here in my crystal ball, even the kindness I feel now towards the one who sits down writing badly, full of all their louche and sexy desires, frankly offensive, banging paper to make him a house that got them here. I hope it will be magic. Thanks.
Thank you to Eileen. One more big round of applause for both readers. There are books for sale. Thank you all for being here. Next week, we're not here at Segue. 2 weeks, Ruth is back with Kit Robinson and Anselm Berrigan.
How right you are, dear Paul, that we hear of famous people's deaths while on vacation. Perhaps it's so their funerals are not too crowded with their loyal fans